Hello friends, this is Niladri Mahapatra once again, and today we'll talk about sprint planning, how we'll be doing it in Jira. We'll open Jira and see how we'll be able to run the sprint planning, configure our sprint backlog and get the outcome of sprint planning, and where we'll get a sprint goal and we'll be getting a sprint backlog. We'll take a couple of assumptions. So assume this is our sprint calendar, where our sprint will be starting on this 30th of August and ending on 12th of September. This is a 2-week sprint, and we already have worked on our capacity planning. So for this example purpose, these are our team member. We have Alex, Amit, Tanshri, Dennis, Jason, Jessica and Mark are our team members, and the final capacity is 46 hours mainly for most of them. And if you actually want to know how we calculated this capacity planning, you can watch another video that where we talked about working on capacity planning. And let's assume we already have a groomed and prioritized backlog, and there will be a definition of ready that we have already worked for the team, where we said story should meet invest, story should be groomed and sized, that is only the story points only, and a clear achievable acceptance criteria should be mentioned. UI change related user story should have a wireframe attached. So these are the definition. We will not be grooming story in this particular video. If you want to see how we are grooming our stories, there will be another video that talks about all about grooming. So let's jump into Jira. So this is our Jira board. The sample backlog is here. We have couple of stories, those are groomed, and for your understanding, whatever is groomed, I have marked story points, and we'll see how many of those groomed story can I move into a sprint backlog. So before we start doing our sprint backlog, we'll be create a sprint, and we'll be giving a date at the time when we'll be starting the sprint. So at the time when we'll be click on that start sprint, it will be asking for a date and the goal. So at the time of discussion, let's assume we have captured our sprint goal and we have kept it separately. The sprint name already is defined based on our previous sprint. It was sprint 1, so it was automatically detected. You can rename the sprint name as well. Now what we'll be doing is, over here we'll talk about this story. If we see, okay, this story is meeting our definition of ready. That means we are able to work on this story. So there are a couple of stories, those had already some tasks defined. We can also create task for the stories those doesn't have any task already there. So there may be some stories you will find those doesn't have any task. This may we have worked on earlier and the tasks are ready. So what we'll be doing is we'll start assigning this story. So for an example, we already have assigned this task to Tanushri, and this task to Amit, and this task to Jason. So we'll look into little more details about all the tasks. So let's open this story. And for your information on the capacity planning, how we do in Jira, we'll talk about little later. Let's first see all the tasks that we have and how we'll be able to estimate those tasks. So we see that this is assigned to sprint 1 because this was earlier taken. So we'll be assigning it to sprint 2 because sprint 1 I already have closed it. And the good part of Jira is if one story is not completed in one sprint, that goes back to backlog, but it keeps the sprint name over here. So it will keep on showing you each and every sprint that it has taken part on. Okay, so you have the description, you have the acceptance criteria, this story is ready. Now we'll be looking into its task. So we have development, testing, code review. For an example, let's take that this is how we will be estimating, and this is the time tracking section on the story level. It was estimated total on 1 day 3 hours and remaining is 1 day 3 hours. So that is how we have configured, and none of them they have logged hours here. So this logged hour is actually every day when you will be working on each task that you assign to a developer, they will log the hour, and that way it will be calculating how many hours is remaining based on what was estimated. So that is how it will be working. So for an example, let me delete this task because this was estimated at sprint 1, and now what I can do, I can create one more task, and for an example I am giving you giving the name as development of UI for an example. So this task is created, your hours is still 13 minutes because it was earlier more 1 day 3 hours or something. So I can assign this task at the time of creation also, you can assign it, or you can assign it right away also. I am just clicking on edit and change the estimated hours for this one. Original estimation, I am saying for an example 8 hours. You need to mention H for hours, otherwise by default it will be taken as day, and remaining at the beginning also 8 hours. Okay, so this task is now updated. If I go back to the user story, it will be, I need to refresh it. So this is 8 hours and I have not assigned it to anyone. Again, oh sorry, I missed to assign this task, so I'll be assigning this task to someone, and I'll say assign it to Tanushri. Assign. So the task is now assigned. If I go back to my user story now, we can see, okay, what was the estimated hours. So this is having 8 hours, this one is having very small 7 minutes of work, this is having 7 minutes of work. So this is minutes because I think by default it is taking minutes. If you want to change it, testing 7 minutes is nothing, so we can actually change the estimation. Yeah, so by default it took 7 minutes. I am giving it as hours, and then again I'll go back. Yes, you can actually change the estimation here. So not the username, I will be going back, and this testing is now here, and code review, let's say let's change the estimation to 2 hours. So instead of 7 minutes, 2 hours, 2 hours, we updated this story. Okay, now what we'll be doing is this is a story task level, this is what it was assigned to, and our story is currently saying this is the story, these are the tasks, and we'll be making one owner for this story who will be a point of contact for that story, especially at the time of sprint review, any demonstration is required. So let's assign it to Tanushree. Normally the team can define who will be the right person, so we will be assigning so there is nothing to do with the estimation hours with whom it is assigned to, and watchers, if any interested party wants to keep a track on this particular story, they can add themselves as a watcher, and that way the sprint is this story is now ready for all the task creation, assignment. It's meeting the definition of ready. Now we can actually assign it to a sprint. So before assignment, what we'll be doing is, the capacity planning we already talked about. In Jira itself, it doesn't support managing the capacity planning within Jira without the support of any plugins. So there are multiple plugins there. Those mostly of them are paid plugins. So if you go for an organized plugin, you will be able to do a capacity planning over there and map how that is happening. But I am taking a base Jira. If you have a base Jira, no plugins, how you will be doing it? So I'll be managing Excel sheets for managing the capacity. For this particular story, I know the story ID is 82. It was estimated as how many story points? This was estimated as, I guess, okay, let me go back to my backlog. This was 82 and 82 is here. I have already moved it to my sprint, and I can see these are the task. This is the estimated story point. Now I have an Excel where I will be able to track it. So here I will be tracking this story as AD2 is my story ID, and also you can manage a story points column. This one was 5. You can update it here. So you can actually manage this kind of Excel where you have all the capacity whatever you have planned, and this will automatically calculate it based on the hours we are having. So for this particular story, we have hours defined, like let's see how what are the hours we had. So Amit, Jason and Tanushree, where Amit have 6 hours, Jason has 2 hours, and Tanushree has 8 hours. 1 day is equal to 8 hours. So I'll be updating Tanushree as 8, Jason as 2, and another was Amit, that was for 6 hours, I guess. So it's this Excel I have prepared for capturing your capacity consumption on the during the sprint planning. Scrum Master normally do that, and updating of the task. Everyone, all developer, if they have a laptop, they can create their own task, assign it, and at the end they says, okay, this is our task hours. If they don't have a laptop, most of the places nowadays they have, but in case you don't, all the team member doesn't have a laptop, along with that, because sprint planning is happening in one room, you are not taking it from your desktop, but even if this is a distributed team, they do it from their desk. I suggest, if you are co-located, take it from one room. That's increase your team collaboration practice. Now once this is done, I will be picking up the second story from the backlog, and we'll pick a story that doesn't have any task defined already. I'll go to backlog. I can see, okay, I have one story currently part of the sprint. So if you look into the sprint backlog, it's not yet started. Once you'll start the sprint, it will start showing you. Okay, so this is another story, AD6, that will be working on, and we'll see. We have the description, and I guess we'll be having the acceptance criteria also. It's meeting our definition of done. Here we see there are no task is yet created, so we'll be creating couple of tasks here before Okay, so on this story, I just in between added these field story points to have a view what exactly it was estimated to, and we can take this story and as a part of the sprint. So this was initially part of sprint 1. I can assign it as a part of sprint 2. So you will not be able to delete these because this was again part of sprint 1. And what I will be doing is I will be quickly create a couple of tasks. Now here the task is not visible by default if there was no task. So what you need to do is click on more and create subtask. So once you will create the first subtask, that section will be appear there. So let me say this one will be the analysis, and it will be done by, let's say, Tanushri. I am not giving any detailed description, but I will be giving an original estimation that let's say 12 hours, and remaining is not 12 hours, let's give it as 4 hour, and this one is as 4 hour, and I'll say create. So now you see this section is now appeared here. You can start creating tasks by clicking this plus icon. Now I will be saying development, and I will assign it to Tanushri. So normally what happen is if this creation of task, the good practice is everyone understand what task they will be working on. Sometimes what's happened, the team work on the stories they predict that will be coming and create the task on a notepad, write the estimated hours, and at the time of sprint planning we says okay, let the scrum master capture these information, and we will be updating or creating the task after the sprint planning. That's why everyone will be saved time, because the product owner most of the time is not very interested to put their time where the team is creating their task, but it says it's a collaborative effort, everyone needs to be in one place. So I'm working for this one. Rest of the task I will be creating within Excels, and in assumption will be as that will be creating later in Jira. So this is who will be working on, and the estimated hours I am giving as 8 hour. It says create. So there are two tasks I already have created. Now quickly I will be adding two more tasks. Right. So I had now created the task that I think will be necessary. So when you will be working on that collaboratively, you will identify what are the tasks required for this particular story. For a better working, I think if you restrict your individual task hour between 8 hours to 12 hours, you will get a better visibility of the entire work, and the scrum master is not necessarily need to create all the tasks for everyone can create their own task. They just need to write it down somewhere, what story, what task they are committing at the time of sprint planning. So this task again will be updating in our tracker, so to see how our capacity is going. So the first none of the story is assigned to anyone because So here you can actually assign it to let's say I'm just assigning it to Tanushri. Assign, then again I am assigning this to again Tanushri, and let's say testing will be done by Jessica, and then we'll be marking Mark, assign this to Mark. So this is what we have planned. You can actually do it in your notepad or any places where you think you will be able to update the Jira later. So for this example, what I will be doing is I will be updating my Excel from this value. So for Tanushree, I can see this is 8 hours and this is 4 hours, so total of 12 hours for this story, and the story is AD16 with story point 2. So I'll have story point 2 AD6. Tanushree is 12 hours. So you can see total committed capacity is 20, available was 50, now 30 is more available. This is the graph of total available capacity and how much they already have committed, right? So Jessica has a task of task of, so here I can see Jessica, we have one task. So let's update the hours for Jessica, and she has a task hours of 5 hours. And then there was another task, I guess that was for Mark, and that was for 1 hour for the code review. Now this is we already planned what the task it will be, and whether we will be having all whether we will be committing it not. If we say we are committing this story, we'll be select the current sprint that is about to start. I'll check that, and now I'll go back to my board, the backlog, to see, okay, there are 2 stories already there. So in another way, instead of opening the story in Jira, if you know the story is well groomed and we have all the information here, you then don't need to open that. You can simply click over here and create subtask and start working from there. So there are also lots of fields here. If you think you don't need that many fields, you can configure your by default. If you clicked on all, it will be disabled. If you clicked on custom, it will be showing what you wants to see. So I said, okay, I will be having assignee. I don't need component, just show me the description. I don't need priority here, and I just need the remaining the time tracking option. So that will be enough for me, and if you don't want description for a quick update, you don't need it. So now here you have only what you exactly need to work on. So going forward, it will be very easy to quickly create task and assign. So here I am assigning it to let's say Dennis, giving hours of 11 hour, and then I'll be remaining will be 11 hours again. The task is now created here, you can see. So okay, let me create all the task once again, and then we'll resume the video to see for the rest of the part. Yes, so now I have actually created the task, and if you actually look into this area particularly, we have almost filled up the capacity, and just for the example purpose I have created this task a little higher so that I can fill up the capacity quickly. When you will be doing it, create the task accordingly, the best fit for that particular assignee and the actual task. So this is how much we are actually how much each resource is occupying or committing the task hours. So this is the assignment graph. It says the there is still some capacity available, but we'll not be able to create or commit a full story with these available hours, so we'll leave it as it is. Maybe they can take some technical spikes that they can do on their individual level. So Jessica and Mark, if we see, Mark have 7 hours of work remaining and Jessica have 16 hours of work remaining, so they still can take up some technical spike where they will do some analysis and research that can give advantage to the future sprint. They can take up that kind of stories. So what I will be doing here is, in Jira, these are the 3 more stories we have committed. So there are, we already saw we can change the sprint number to move it to one particular sprint. This is your upcoming sprint area. So what I can do is I can move a story like this into a sprint, or I can drag this area and leave it here. So now these all the stories, those are part of your upcoming sprint. And quickly to have a look, we have all the tasks created here, and these are the tasks we have, and your capacity is now filled. So when you are doing it, it's, if individual can create their own task, that is good. If it is taking time for a scrum master to creating the task one by one by himself, that will be too much time consuming. So it's always advisable, just mark it somewhere and update from their desktop when they get back to sit, and have this ready. You can still track how much capacity you had and how much you are filling up, and stop the sprint planning when you see that you will not be able to make any new stories complete. So don't pick a story that is partially you think you will be able to complete. So that if story is not completed 100% with a potentially deployable state, then don't do it. It's time to start our sprint. So what you will be doing is, you will click on start sprint. So once you will click on start sprint, it will ask the sprint name once again. Duration is 2 days, and when you are starting, so as per our assumption, we'll be starting it on 30th, that is the Wednesday here, and the last date it will be taking up automatically based on the 2 weeks, and the time I'm starting it as 1 a.m. for an example. So there are 10 working days in the sprint, so I am saying start. So now the sprint is started. It's saying 12 days remaining because I have started couple of days before the sprint actual start days. So instead of 10 days, it's saying 12 days remaining. All your stories and tasks are now ready in your board. This is my story and this is my task. So if you click on here, this is the issue detail view, and it's saying the remaining. If you click on the story, it will be showing 5 estimated and remaining sum is 2. The story level remaining is I don't need, because if you are expecting someone will be working on story level also, you need to give some task hours on the story, but we'll be working on this task layer only. So this is how the representation of board is. Once you have started working on, you can actually move these from left to right within whatever the columns you have, and that way you can actually start working on. It says it will show you how many hours total estimated and how many remaining hours is, whom it is assigned to. This icon is a task and this icon is a story. That way you will be able to, so this green kind of icon, it says it's a story. This arrow is a different priority. If you want to change the priority, you can change on the task level by changing the priority here. Yes, so here you can have different priority. You can, in Jira everything is configurable, so you can make the configuration there. Okay, and one more tip on the Jira board that we just have configured. Over here you can see this is the story, and below there are the task. You can move the story like this, and you can move the task like this. But normally what we like to do is we like to have the story as the top of all the tasks throughout all the swim lane. We don't want to move the stories, and to configure that you can just go to this board, configure, and then click swim lanes. Inside swim lanes, by default it shows on query, where you can type your different queries. But what we'll be doing is, for this particular area, we'll be select stories, and then we'll go back to board. You can see all these stories are currently over here, and all the tasks over here. So even if you move this task here, this will be arranged like this. So your story will remain same. Everything is under this particular story, whatever the task you have created. And at the same time, you can arrange your board by different assignees that you have assigned. So if I select assignee and I say show the assignee name at the beginning, at top of every task, and I then go back to board, it will arrange based on these. Each assignee will be having different task, and you can move this story. So here this story is coming because I have make one story as a this Tanushree as a reporter of this story, and also she is assigned to this task. So that's why everything is coming. So based on your need, you can configure your board. So I always like to configure it on the stories. And also if you are working on epics, you can have multiple epics like that. If you are working with multiple projects in one board, you can configure with like that. So I'll be configuring with stories and back to board. Now if you see, this is what I was expecting. Again, the another tip, the sprint goal, we were unable to do that at the beginning when we are starting the sprint, because this is a server edition of Jira, and server edition of Jira doesn't support the sprint goal or editing a sprint that is already started. But you can do it on cloud version of Jira. To demonstrate that, I just configured a trial version of cloud, and this is how it looks like. And here you can see there is a edit sprint. So if you click on edit sprint, you will be get the sprint start date and end date. You can change the start date and end date as well, and you can actually give a sprint goal of let's say line number 1, goal 1, that is implementation of user registration page. So that to do that, there can be multiple stories. For an example, creating logged in user, creating user profile, forget password. There can be multiple pages to implement that, but this is my goal. So I want to implement user registration. Instead of page, you can say process. So user registration process can be having email verification. You can have different authentications way. You can give up options to upload profile photos. That can be multiple stories. So this is one goal. And at the time, second goal, you can give enable credit card payment gateway. So there will be multiple stories to enable this goal too. And at the time of sprint review, we will be verify which goal we have achieved from this sprint executions. You can click on update. Now this sprint goal is visible here, and you can start working on that. That is how you will be working on sprint goal, and that's only available on cloud version of Jira. If you want to see your burn down, you'll able to see this is your ideal burn down, how it will be coming to. And this is already shown here because our start date is 30th. Normally we start the sprint one day before. Here I have already started it today. As of now it's 25th, so that's why it's actually showing this way. But if you start it one day before, it would have start from here. So that is your ideal burn down, and every day once you will be working on your Jira board, burning out hours, it will be burning down. So I think I have captured how you will be doing your sprint planning, creating the task, assigning the task, and then start your sprint and have your scrum board ready. This is how you will be working on Jira for planning your sprint. And before I conclude to this video, I just want to make some notes. This video is particularly made to give you an example how you will be planning your sprint in Jira. So your case may be different. So for an example, if the stories are not groomed, you need to do the grooming at the time of sprint planning itself. If your stories are not estimated, you need to do the estimation at the time of sprint planning. If the capacity was not planned, you need to do your capacity planning at the time of sprint planning. So those are the activities I didn't captured in this particular video, because we were in an assumption of these are already made before we started the sprint planning. Similarly, if you are not doing capacity, if you are using your velocity as a capacity to plan your sprint, your approach will be something different. So I will suggest you to watch the another video that I have, and that's on YouTube. So that video is understanding a sprint planning meeting. So you can able to browse through on my channel, or I will try to put the URL link before you start planning. If you are new to sprint planning, you should watch this video to find out what are the different aspects of video. And if you like to read about sprint planning, you can browse through this particular link and read about sprint planning. There are many areas that are possibles. In particular, Jira I have just captured in one path. There can be multiple ways you can do your sprint planning. Hope this video help you understand what exactly you were expecting from understanding configuring the Jira for doing your sprint planning. I will be coming up with many more videos on Jira, as well as on Agile, different areas, Kanban, Scrum, and different ceremonies, artifacts, or the Scrum roles, and many more. So keep watching. Don't forget to subscribe. We'll see you once again in our next video. Thank you.